Hello, welcome to another tutorial in the Let's Code Essentials series, and we are going to talk about notes in this series. As you can see, we added elements to the section. Notes are sort of properties, or yes, we call them notes in Let's Code, or they are properties that you apply to these elements to make it look the way they do. So, for example, when I click on this text and I move it around, or I increase the width of the text, you can see there's a node called width that should automatically increase. Now, for example, if I select this element and I want to, let's go back to this text. If I select this text and I want to have a background color, all I have to do is just go to my available nodes. That's what we call available nodes. All the nodes that can be applied to elements is what we call available nodes. And as you've noticed, the applied nodes is what appears when you click on any element. So when I click on this element, what happens is all the nodes applied to this element will show up here so that I can tweak it. Okay. And then when I click this text, right, all the nodes applied to it will appear here so I can tweak it. For example, this node font size will increase the font size of this text, right? And what that does is it gives you the ability to sort of increase the font size. And since I'm not going to click on anything, we've talked about it, I'm going to want to what? I'm just changing the color, which is another node. You just click on the color and you just change it. What I'm going to do is press Ctrl S to save what I've done so far. Now what I'm going to do next is add a background to this text. And all I have to do is just double click the node I want to add and it automatically adds it to it. So it becomes very easy to edit and work on elements. This is the basics of Let's Code. If you understand this, you can do anything in Let's Code. You can basically create anything that comes to mind. So these are the basic notes that are applied to elements in Let's Code. As I said, there are a lot of you that are watching this that are developers or designers already that know what these notes are, and that's fine. But we are talking, we want to make it in a way that everybody that's watching it can understand and use it. Now you don't really need to know what these nodes actually are, but then if you want to, we have a node reference that shows you all the available nodes that we have in Let's Code. We have quite a lot of them. You can actually use what you can actually read the node reference and know what each of these nodes are used for so that when you're building you can apply them. As you notice, anytime you create any element, there are nodes that have been applied already because they are selected nodes that we think that each of these elements need. So at the end of the day, you don't really need to add more. You have to add more when you want to change certain settings. Like for example, let's look at this text. What we have here, let me click on this, wait for it to load, move it aside, reduce the size a bit and move it aside. Then I'm just going to go and click back on this. And as you can see, what I was talking about was the line height. You know, the height between the sentences in this text is too wide. So what I would want to do is just look in the notes for line height, double click it, and as you can see, it actually applies it to it. When it's applied, I can just go and tweak it here, and let's see what actually I'm going to get at the end of it. So as you can see, working with Let's Code is not difficult at all. Now you are going to go through this process to create awesome things. Like for example, I click this section and all of a sudden I want the background to be white. I go to background color and I change the color of the section to white, and that is it. So let me click outside here and then I'll save. So I'm done. I'm sort of creating a simple design. So I can just move this here, okay, and reduce the size a bit. So this can actually serve as my logo. I'm going to take this text, make it bigger and place it in the middle of the page. Now what I'm going to do is just try to edit the text. Now sometimes when you click on the text and you don't see the cursor, just right click on the text and then you click back again. It's just going to show up. And we have, when you select the text, we have these elements that you can use. You can sort of add a video link, make it superscript or subscript text, underline. There are so many things you can do to the text. I'm not going to do any of them. What I'm just going to do is just change the text. So I'm just going to change the text in here that, let's say, okay, so I'm just going to make a capital. And then once I'm done with that, I'm just going to go ahead and press Ctrl S to save. my text. But what I also want to do is probably change the font family. That's the type of font that's being used. I could use this if I want, but I think I have a font that I want to use already. So let's just go look for that font and that'll be fine. So I'll probably want something interesting, something light or something. Okay. So I have this font, which is here. Now I'm going to stretch this a bit so that it shows. I can stretch this a bit. Okay. And I'm going to still click on this again and move it around. Now what I've done here is a simple thing that we can all do, and as you can see, I'm sort of building my website slowly. And the next part of the app that we want to talk about before we move into actually building an interface is some of the shortcuts that you can use. Now, for all of it, to add a block to this element, all I have to press is Control B to add the block to the element, and it automatically adds the block to the element that I've actually selected. But one thing you have to also remember, as I've always said, is this: if now you see, this is very important. The reason why I made this happen is because I want to show you something. You see, I kept clicking the element. I didn't actually wait for it to load, and then I went to the next thing. So what happens is that if you do that and your internet is a bit slow, it just mangles up your website. But that's not a big deal. All you have to do is just drag this back to where it's supposed to be, because there's a section, and as we have already talked about it, is the width of the section that it's a section that contains the element. So all I have to do is just pull it back. And one of the things I must do is make this relative. Sort of, you understand all these settings later. But when something like this happens, don't be alarmed. As I'm doing, you can just follow the same thing I'm doing to just get it back to where it's supposed to be. Now, well, I just clicked on the width, which I shouldn't have. So let's see that I click back on my pixels and I press Ctrl S to actually save it. Now we have our website. I added a block to the website, so I'm just going to move it aside. That's Ctrl B to add a block. You must see the bounding box on the elements that you select before you actually go ahead and select other elements. So now that I have it sort of set to half, I want this to be 100% width. So I'm just going to go back to percentage and just increase the width 100% and press Ctrl S to save it where it is. Now I'm going to click on the block element to select it. I can do whatever I want with this block, but another shortcut that I can actually add to this is, now I waited for it to load before I'm going to do what I need to do. It's Control E to add a button to it. So as you can see, I have my button added to it, and I can move the button wherever I want. Oops. So I forgot to change it back to pixels. Be sure to change your setting back to pixels if you want to move certain things around freely, because it becomes difficult to move it around if it's in percentage. So now I'm just going to move my button back to where it was. And as you can see, we are sort of creating something interesting. If we had images here, it would have been easy. We just put in our logo. We just put in our logo to the left, put some text in, put our navigation here, a few buttons here, and then we have a hero, or what we call the header of our website. That's very simple, and I'm sure you are following. So that's easy. Now once you've grasped all this, these elements, we are going to add them as we build, so you are going to get to know and use them. Let's dive into something deeper.